Hello, welcome back to the channel, and today I have another tier list for you, and I guess in honor of the Resident Evil 4 Remake coming out, I thought we would rank the other Resident Evil games. Note, this tier list I'm using does include everything, like including the side games, but I will not be including them in this tier list, mainly because I've never fucking played those. So this is mainly just going to be the main series of games only, and if that's not enough time, then I'll fucking rank the movies as well. But yeah, let's begin with the original Resident Evil from 1996. I think this is a solid A tier. Again, it's what kicked off the franchise and kicked off the survival horror video game genre, but it's not perfect. It definitely was. There's a lot of kinks in there that hadn't been shriveled out yet. But yeah, definitely a good standard to start with. Next up, Resident Evil 2. This one's difficult because it's good. It's really good. And I think it fixes a lot of the issues that were in the first one. But it's still only an A tier. Because, well, mainly, I don't like the camera system it had originally. I don't know. It's probably just a me thing, but actually, no, it's definitely just a me thing. But I was never a huge fan of the fixed camera. The games are still great, it's just the fixed camera kind of annoys me if I play it for too long. But yeah, RE2, solid, somewhat improvement from the original. And yeah, it's still an A tier. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Ooh. This is a good one. It still has that fixed camera, but it's still a great one. And I'm giving this the original RE3 an S tier, mainly because of Nemesis. Like, Nemesis is one of the greatest and most iconic villains in all of video game history. So I feel like I have to give this monster the S tier. But yeah, and the game is so good. And sadly, the remake just kind of flubs it, but we'll get to that in a minute. Resident Evil Code Veronica. This is one that I don't know too much about. I don't remember it as well as some of the other ones, but probably because it's not really something you consider a main entry, but I'm still including it because I have dealt a little with it. And also, this is one of the games that people have been wanting a remake for years, but we haven't gotten it yet. But I'd give Code Veronica a solid B. Again, it's a little forgettable, but I think it's a solid B tier. Or let's skip over a little bit to the Resident Evil 1 Remake from 2002. I'd say this is this is kind of on the level of the original. The only real thing they did was update the graphics, and that's about it. And I kind of want to see them try and remake it again, but this time like how the RE games are today. So I'd be interested in seeing like an actual up-to-date version for 2023 or 4. But yeah, the RE1 remake, solid entry. It's definitely better. But yeah. But yeah, it's not S tier though. It's definitely better though. Resident Evil 0, kind of same-ish vibes. Like, it's basically just Resident Evil 1, but before, because it's a prequel. The additions it gives to the lore are interesting, like with James Marcus and meeting him, learning more about Umbrella's history. Like, that's interesting. The game plays like poop, though. I don't know, something about its controls with me just sucked, I'm gonna be honest. So I'm giving it a B tier. it's still fun in a challenging way, but it's definitely poopier compared to the others. It's skipping a little bit here. All right, Resident Evil 4. Oh boy. This is the game that essentially made Resident Evil into what it is today. Because this is the game that introduces the over-the-shoulder cam, which would be used for the rest of the franchise, except 7 and 8, which use first person. And also, but in my eyes, it's not perfect. I know everybody else says that this game is perfect, but in my eyes, it's not really perfect. There could definitely be some fixes here, and thank God the remake fixes so much. But it's still great, and I'm gonna give it an A tier. Again, not as, but yeah, it's still a little, it's not perfect in my eyes. It's still great though. All right, Resident Evil 5. Now, this is the game that everyone says kind of brought RE as a franchise down. It definitely trades in way more horror for action, which to an extent 4 did as well, but with 5 it's way more apparent. Again, story-wise, I think 5 is okay. It's cool finally facing Wesker, but it's kind of like the only real moment I remember from 5 is the final boss with Wesker. Besides that, I don't really remember anything else. So I'm going to give Resident Evil 5 a C tier. It's not bad, it's just really, really unmemorable. Although I would be interested in seeing that get remade. Like, that'd be interesting to see that get remade. Maybe make it more of a horror game. But yeah, that's my opinion on 5. Alright, Resident Evil Revelations. This game's alright. It definitely, I think, has probably some of the most interesting monsters of the series. Like, I remember the weird, like, pale, gloopy white people things that they kind of looked like the Regenerators from 4, but they couldn't regenerate, which in a way makes them lamer. But the thing I remember most is 2 of the boss fights. I remember the dude with a giant circ saw hand. Like, that was like the fleshy circ saw. I remember that, and that thing was disgusting. But I also remember the dude who could teleport. It makes no fucking sense, but it's so stupidly fun. So for that, I'll give RE Revelations, it's teetering between B and A tier. But I'll give Resident Evil Revelations, I'll give it a B tier. Again. Yeah, I think B tier is better, actually, than A. But now, Resident Evil 6. This is the game everybody says is the worst in the franchise. Personally, it's definitely low, but maybe not the worst. It's low, but maybe not the worst. I think the main problem with Resident Evil 6 is that there's just too much with it. Like, I think there's like 4 fucking campaigns. Like, you have Leon's, I think Ada, Chris, and Jill, I think. And I think that's the main problem. There's just way too much. But there's parts of that I enjoyed. So for that, I'll give it a C tier. Resident Evil Revelations 2. This is my absolute worst in the franchise. The first Revelations was a fun little side adventure, but this game is taken to a whole low of asshole and donkey balls of terribleness. Seriously, this game is majestically terrible. The story isn't interesting. The characters are annoying. The only real good thing I had about Revelations 2 was that it had cool looking monsters, but that's it. So for that, it's getting a fucking D tier. It is not good. Worst of the franchise for me. Alright. I'm going to skip over the remakes of 2 and 3. I'm going to do the remakes at the end. But skipping over, Resident Evil 7. Now, fun fact, this was the first Resident Evil game I ever played. When I was a spry young boy, in 2019, I picked this game up because I had a, was it a GameStop gift card? Or did I just have money? But yes, I was a spry young lad going down to my local GameStop, and I picked this game up. It was 2019. What a year. But Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard was the first video game experience I had where I was genuinely fucking scared. It's like I had played games like Five Nights at Freddy's, Bendy, all this shit a person around my age was into at that time. But this was the game that inspired true fear in video games for me. And for that reason, it is getting a goddamn S tier. It's also the game that saved the franchise, so, you know. But yeah, Resident Evil 7, great game, good story. And it's also somewhat of a, kind of like a clean slate almost. Like, it doesn't ignore the previous ones, but it's definitely a new story, and I can appreciate that. And it's so fucking good. It's terrifying as hell, but it's so good. Fucking love it. That's why it is an S tier. It is so good. Resident Evil 8 Village. Also gonna give this an S tier. I just like how fucking ridiculous this one is. It's kind of like RE4 in a lot of ways, but mainly in tone. Of course, gameplay shit as well, but the tone of Resident Evil 8 is that it's scary, but it's not afraid to go ridiculous. Like, you have the scene in the Beneviento Manor with the giant fetus baby, and that's terrifying. But then you have the fight with Carl Heisenberg, where you're in a fucking battle tank, and like, it's dumb as hell and so goofy, but it knows it is, and that's why it's so fun. And again, it has an interesting story that kind of tallies back all the way to the original. So yeah, giving RE8 a fucking great S tier. Alright, now, I guess we'll do the multiplayer game. Resident Evil Resistance, I'll give it a B tier. It was fun when it came out, but it kind of died a little quickly. But for the time it was in the spotlight, it was fun. It's basically just Dead by Daylight, but with Resident Evil, which is funny considering Resident Evil would come to Dead by Daylight with Nemesis and Wesker as killers. But yeah, it was a fun when it was around. So yeah. Now it's time for the remakes. Starting with... Oh shit, I guess I should have done the RE1 remake now. It doesn't matter. Starting with the Resident Evil 2 remake. I'm giving this an S tier. This was the second game I played in the Resident Evil series, and it is so good. It overhauls the original RE2 in ways that are just beyond incredible. One, the graphics, exceptional. You can almost feel the blood and gore from the zombies and shit. And also, the atmosphere of the RE2 remake is so good. And a lot of that has to do with, one, the visual style of it mixed with the sound design. I think the sound design is probably the best part of this game because like, when Mr. X comes in, dude, just hearing his footsteps is terrifying. And it's done so well, and it's another really good fear experience. So yeah, RE2 Remake, S tier. Now, let's get to the disappointment that is the RE3 remake. Oh, Lord. What went wrong with this? The original Resident Evil 3 is not perfect by any means, but it's still fun, great, and again, gives us one of the greatest video game villains of all time. But the remake kind of botched it a little. Because, one, it cuts way too much from the original. It doesn't really add anything. And also, I beat it in like 3 hours. Which, that's not the amount of time you should be spending on a game. The only reason you should be beating something in 3 hours, one of these games in 3 hours, is if you're speedrunning it. So, like, it's way too short. Way too rushed as well. The only real good thing I really had to say about RE3 was that it was fun to play in that 3 hours, and that Nemesis was cool. But that was about it. So I'm giving the RE3 remake a C tier. It cut way too much out and was way too short. Alright. Last up for this tier list, the Resident Evil 4 Remake. This just came out. Of course, I have my review for it already. And you already know, if you watch that video, you already know where this is going. This is going in the S tier, baby. Because, like I said, the original RE4 is great, but not perfect. The RE4 Remake makes it perfect. It overhauls all the annoying shit I hated in the original to a way that makes it fun and challenging in a way that's fun, not annoying, and it's just, it's so fucking good. Like, trust me, I was terrified as well when they announced the remake for R4, but my god, it exceeded my expectations. Especially with the travesty that was the remake of 3. It just did what the remake of 2 did, and made it just better. But, yeah, that's my tier list for the mainline Resident Evil games. So here you go. In S tier, we have all that. But, yeah. We're not done, though. Because I thought, why not rank the movies as well in the same tier list? Video. So, I'll be right back when I find it. Alright, so we have the Resident Evil movies tier list on. Now, just like with the games tier list, this includes some movies that I have not seen, mainly the animated ones, and since I haven't seen them, I won't be including them, although I might watch them at some point. But starting up with the original Resident Evil movie from 2002, directed by Mr. Paul W.S. Anderson, who also gave us Event Horizon, Mortal Kombat, and Alien vs. Predator. So, first, I'd give this an A tier. Again, it's not a great movie, not by any fucking means, but it's fun. It definitely captures the spirit of the first game very well. And the fucking laser hallway scene is still great to this day. But, again, there's definitely improvements to be made, mainly with the effects being so, but yeah, definitely a solid A tier. Next up is, of course, Resident Evil Apocalypse from 2004. I'm giving this an S tier. This is my personal favorite film out of the RE movies, because this one captures the spirit of RE's 2 and 3 so well, and of course, I mean, it helps that Nemesis himself is there. But yeah, it's still fucking great. I actually watch this one from time to time, kind of like on a Halloween kind of like tradition. I have this as a part of a Halloween tradition, and because it's the best one in the series. But yeah, next up is Resident Evil Extinction from 2006 or 7, I can't remember. This movie is basically Resident Evil mixed with Mad Max. It's very post-apocalyptic, and And that tone, I think, works for something that isn't called Resident Evil. If this were something like Days Gone, which granted that game didn't exist, but this doesn't... Extinction doesn't feel like a Resident Evil movie. That's what I'm trying to say. It feels way more like a Mad Max or kind of some other road-based undead thing, like Days Gone, or to an extent, The Walking Dead. And for that, I'll give it a C tier. No B tier. I think B tier is more fair because there are some great moments in it. But next up is, where the fuck is it? Resident Evil Afterlife, the fourth one. It's kind of just a C tier. It's kind of meh. There's not really much to it. It's kind of just there. It is cool to see some of the enemies from the game, like the giant sword fuck from RE5. It's kind of cool to see him. There's a bit too much Pyramid Head energy there. It kind of feels like Resident Evil just wanted their own version of Pyramid Head. But it's kind of cool seeing him, and that goes for the whole series. It's just kind of cool seeing monsters from the games in here, but it's just kind of a boring movie. They don't really do much with the plot of it being like them trapped in a prison trying to escape. They don't really do much with it, and it kind of drags, but it's okay. Resident Evil Retribution, again, it's kind of just there, so it's another C tier. Then we have Resident Evil The Final Chapter. I'm giving this shit a fucking... Oh, there's actually a didn't watch tier. I didn't see that. That's cool. But yeah, that shit's a D tier. That movie is so bad. And it contradicts so much of the information. And it contradicts and retcons so much information from the previous entries. And it's just... It's also just bad. And also the horrible... Like, the genuinely horrible production history of this movie, like, it's a downer, man. Just hearing about all the things that went wrong making it. I'm not really going to talk about it here because I don't feel comfortable talking about it here, but you can look it up for yourself if you want to. This movie's had a fucking horrible production history. But yeah, I guess I'll put all this stuff in the didn't watch. But the final movie is Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. It's alright. I'd say B tier. Again, similar to what the problem with RE6 is that there's just way too much in the movie. Because it's trying to combine the plots of REs 1 and 2. And I think it does way too much. I feel like to do it more effectively is to just do a movie on RE1 and then a sequel to 2. So yeah, I think that's the main problem with it. It's just there's way too fucking much. And also this movie clearly did not have much of a budget because the effects are shoddy at best and very, very kind of uneven. Like, some effects are pretty good, some are terrible, but it's a B tier overall. Again, I'm still waiting for like a God tier Resident Evil movie that's, well, actually, good in the eyes of many. But yeah, that's the tier list for the movies. Again, you can have a look if you want. But yeah, that's the video. Hope y'all enjoyed this Resident Evil tier list of both the games and movies. If there's anything you want me to do a tier list of in the future, because I do have my eyes on doing a tier list on horror movies at some point. I don't know why I haven't done that yet, but I want to do it soon. But if there's anything else you want me to do a tier list of, like foods or food-related things, I actually enjoy making these tier list videos. Again, spewing out like micro opinions I find that to be really fun. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and subscribe if you enjoy my content, and I'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.